Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at the county jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2.
Hello, Amy. Yes, yeah, I'm doing fine. It's the same old out here, but I'm happy to see we're making some progress. There's a lot of stuff going on in the national news that could help our cause. Yes, yeah, and I do appreciate all the information you're sharing about that jail. Jails are very, very difficult to get information on because they're so secretive, but it's very hard to hide anything from the people who are in there. So I'm very happy that there are people inside that's speaking to us. So as long as you're sending out messages and calling and visiting folks, we can get the information that we need and we can share it with the public. And I'm hoping these things that are going on nationally will draw attention to detention centers across the United States, because not just jails are having issues, which are very secretive, but prisons and work centers and even juvenile detention centers are having issues. And I think if the public hears about it and knows what's going on in there and decides not to do anything, that's what the United States is all about. And there's really not too much we can do about that. But if the public comes back and says we would have done something had we known, then that's where it falls back on us. And so the more you share, the more likely we are to gain support, or at least make the public aware of the things that are going on in there. And as you know, not everything is good. And I'm glad you're doing that, because filing complaints and contacting the local representatives and at least fighting to get what's right is a good step. Oh yeah, I know. There's a lot of brick walls that you'll be running into out there, but you only lose in situations like that when you just give up. And you're not a quitter. You're the type of person who will try time and time again to get the right thing done in this bad situation. Well, yeah, the prisons, they do keep their little secrets. And the women's prison, they still have biological males in there. And even my fiance, who was really pro trans, is turning away because she's beginning to see what we didn't see. And I think in part because when you're in prison, you tend to get lonely and feel isolated. And my fiance, she was quite suicidal, and she almost succeeded because she was just distraught. And when I talked to her, she said she turned to drugs to get away from stuff. And yeah, even though you can get the drugs in the prison, they're not the best solution. And I was telling her that I work with folks
You have 60 seconds remaining.
to try to find an alternative to what they grew up with and what they feel comfortable with, which is drugs. So what I what I want to do here is open up the line of communication so that people feel a little more comfortable about themselves, and then they won't have to turn to the trans women
You have 30 seconds remaining.
for their comfort or their sexual desire. I mean, a lot of women turn to other women when they're in prison, but we got to try to keep it as healthy as possible. And communicating, visiting, writing, those type of things do help. And I think I did help her with that. And she's not feeling so dependent on the trans people. Yeah, well, maybe they'll be gone by the time you
Thank
get
you for
there.
using inmate call. Goodbye.
Hello, welcome to a QS Inmate Call. I'm your host, Joel Wilborn, and I am a prison advocate. I want to draw attention to what's going on inside the prisons and pretty much any facility that incarcerates people. And one of the things that I'm concentrating on here, besides the mental well-being and the living conditions of incarceration centers, I want the public to have a say in this, because if we have information shared, then the public can put in their input on what they think could be done to improve it, or if there's any changes that need to be made, or if they want to increase or decrease the budget. In situations like this, knowledge is extremely important. We just need to know that. Now, in the call, I was talking about some national events that's going on, and we have a detention center for illegal immigrants that's been called Alligator Alcatraz. And recently, some legislators went in to view the facility, and some of them weren't too happy with the way things are in there. They're saying that the people are put in cages, and that the water, they're saying the same water that they bathe in is the ones that they drink, and that the people are being dehumanized, which is something I say about prisons quite often. Matter of fact, a lot of the prison advocates and prison reformists and family members, they're constantly fighting. And you don't really know it until you see it. And these legislators, they saw it. And with jails, a woman could give birth in a jail and it won't be documented. Or there can be an assault in a jail. There could be an escape. Something that's not very, let's say, very positive about the jail could easily be hidden. And in order to get that information out, we'll have to broadcast it. And then we'll have to allow the public to speak on it. Now, when we had an issue come up on the ballot about building a new jail, there were a lot of advocates that spoke out against it. And I was one of them. I don't think we need new jails or more jails. I think we need alternative methods. And we turned it down, and the council or the county had to come up with something else. Now, you can't just raise taxes, because that's something we need to vote on, and you can't allocate money from somewhere else. So, as they're looking into it, they find that alternative methods like electronic home monitoring will work, or counseling, or things that you haven't even thought of yet. And when people are put in the situations, they tend to think wisely. They'll come up with something that can work, or at least fill in until they can come up with a better idea. And I like that. That was good, because it drew attention to us spending all this money, and all they want to do is just keep filling the jails up. And there's a lot of revolving doors in situations like that. The people will go to jail, get out, and go back to jail, especially somebody who's an addict. Because if these people need drugs in their mind, Being in prison, being in jail, being locked up isn't going to help. And that's the same thing with electronic home monitoring. They'll find a way to get the drug. But if you have a probation officer constantly checking in, making surprise visits, or you even have somebody in the prison that just brings people out of their cell or sits down with them without um, any notification. The people, they do these things because they feel they're not going to get caught. Nobody's going to walk into a police station and sit down in the lobby and just start doing crack. But if they felt that they were in a safe, secure area, they may do it. And there's little areas that they feel that way in these facilities. So we need to have people that are just watching them, having body cams or cams out in all over or not necessarily cams, but cameras, security cameras all throughout, and giving them privacy, but not to the point where they can find the spot to do things that are against the rules or against the law. Little bitty things can help addicts. Bigger things can help those with medical conditions, because medical conditions are one of the most expensive expenses that we have out in the free world and also inside the prison. I studied extensively the women's prison, and they are highly involved in spending money on medical, and the medical isn't the best. Maybe if the inmates had a state or federal insurance program that they could work and pay deductibles or pay premiums on, they could get better care and they'd feel more responsible. But in order to do that, you're going to have to give them appropriate pay. And that will lead to them having a more responsibility when they get out. But if they have little pay and they can afford a few things, it's kind of hard to push them to get education and get a decent job, because they feel that if they're going to be making less than minimum wage in prison and then minimum wage outside of prison, why push to get higher education or job skills or learn to write a resume? You need to motivate them for that. And people have different reasons that will motivate them. So what I'm hoping to do is just have a facility where the people feel human. Let legislators tour jails and tour prisons and talk to the people that are there, and then share that with the public. Because, of course, the public can't go into these facilities to tour them. It just would not, it just doesn't make any sense to do something like that, especially when you're in a secure facility. But a handful of legislators or business professionals, somebody that can really help these folks, if they can go through there, I think we can get some of this information out and we can actually do something that will help people. And I like that idea. I like thinking about sharing the experiences that's going on in there so that we'll understand what these people are going through. You really don't know what they're going through until you're in there. But the next best thing is witness testimony. And that's one of the things that I'm pushing for. I've been blocked by the Washington Department of Corrections. I want to visit my fiance, but they tell me I can't because I'm a security and safety concern. And I've been asking them for that for years to try to figure out what it is that makes me so dangerous I can't walk into the facility to visit her. And the closest I get is they're telling me that I prey on vulnerable people. Now I know that's false. It's something they just made up, because anybody who's caring for a vulnerable person, if somebody is threatening to harm these people or harming them, it is their legal responsibility to report it to the officials, whether law enforcement or maybe state agencies. So if I really was a security and safety concern, and the reason was I was preying on people, which is a good reason to classify a person as a safety and security concern. The only thing is, in order to get that designation of preying on people, you have to be convicted of a crime, because preying on vulnerable people is a crime. And the state is required to report that if it occurs. So it's like you applying for a job and they're telling you that you're a murderer, and you don't ever remember being investigated or arrested or convicted, but they're calling you a murderer. You can't do that. And they can't designate me as a criminal without being convicted of a crime. That's what's called due process. It's also innocent until proven guilty. So to have something like that, and then for them to use that to restrict me from sending mail and from receiving phone calls or using the email system, it just gives me kind of a suspicion. What's going on? Why are they saying that? I even have discussions with my fiance about what that is. She's ready when she gets out to fight that, which is good. I need somebody else to help me to to fight what's going on in there. But you have a secure facility. They monitor the email, monitor the U.S. Postal System mail. They monitor visits. I mean, this is a secure facility. I want to know that my fiance is secure inside these facilities. I want to know that. But by telling me that I'm causing a threat by sending a letter out, that's kind of overkill. And it shows that they're not monitoring the mail. I'm not sure how a letter could harm anybody, especially one that's censored or reviewed, but that's what they're telling me. They're telling me in so many words they're not doing their job and properly securing the facility, which means we need somebody to go into these prisons and check out their system. When I spoke to the person inside of the mailroom about a package that I had ordered for my fiance that was lost, she walked me through the process. And it sounded really good. And if they follow that, they're not going to lose anything. But even she was saying there's occasions that the people aren't doing their job. And I think that's a big problem. It's not me, it's the people inside the facility. Those who have direct contact. When they tell me that I'm sending a contraband email, then I'm thinking if the person gets it, that's on the facility, not me. I send it, they review it, they deliver it. If I send funds and they're telling me I'm funding people that's unauthorized, I don't give funds to unauthorized people. I send funds to the facility who then reviews it and then gives it to the people. So if anybody's funding unauthorized people, it's the facility. If anybody's sending unauthorized email, it's the facility. And they're trying to make it look like it's my fault when it's not. And when you read their policy, it doesn't show that sending these things to them is the bad thing. It shows that if you send them and they do their job and they catch it and keep it from going to the incarcerated person, then you could be blocked because it's you keep sending this stuff, we keep blocking it, and you're wasting our time, so we're just going to block you. That to me makes sense. But I can't call a facility. So for them to block my number, it just, I'm kind of wondering if I'm not supposed to contact the center, are they saying that the center, people inside the center can't call me? And are they saying that they're not monitoring the phone calls? There's just a blanket block. They're just blocking everything. And could it be because they are just getting lazy? They don't have the manpower? They don't know what they're doing? I don't know. I may have to go to court to figure that out. But in the meantime, I'm left with all these questions. And it shows me that they're hiding something. That's just immediately this thing I get. The real reason isn't being told. And I would really like to contact my legislator to go down and take a look at it. I have contacted local law enforcement to go in and investigate things, and they found some illegal activity that was going on in there, mainly the drugs. And it's a shame I have to do that because first I contact the facility. There's illegal drugs going on in there. And they kind of say, well, yeah, we know, but there's nothing we can do about it. I contact law enforcement, and law enforcement can talk to the people, especially the people that I name, and they can make some arrests, which you would think the facility would be able to do, but they're not. So accountability and what they're hiding in there is really the security threat. I can't send a Christmas card that will harm anybody, and I won't try to do anything like that. If I did, let's say I laced it with a poison and it got to the facility, they would reject it. If they deliver it, they could come back and blame me for it. But then during the investigation is, well, if your job is to protect the people who are incarcerated and this was delivered by a prison official to the incarcerated person, how can the facility not be held responsible? These are things we need to expose. These are things we need to show to the public. Yes, those detention centers are deplorable. They look terrible. But they're allegedly temporary. They're just going to hold them until they deport them. What about somebody who's stuck in a facility for 30 years? Or what if somebody who's sitting in a jail who's pregnant and has a stillborn baby? Is that something that we need to know? Is that something that's important? For the safety of our community, it very well could be. Because all humans, we have things that we like and we have things that we dislike and we have ways that we want to be treated. And to be disrespected like that, to be treated like less than a human, that can have a serious mental effect on somebody. So bad that the person could go out and harm somebody. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So locking a person up for 30 years, putting them in a warehouse pretty much, and then releasing them isn't helping. It's just delaying it for 30 years. While we have these people in our custody, we should work with them. It's like you want to repair a car and the person doesn't want to bring the car in. You can't work on it. You can't fix it. But if you have the car and you have the parts and you have the resources, the car can be repaired. And that's the only way the car can be repaired. And we have the people who have the issues, that have the things that break down their normal activity, and we can observe it, and we can work with them, and we can help them to fix it. That's why we call these things correctional centers. So I'm hoping we can get an edge on this and get this worked out. But in the meantime, when you drive by a prison or a jail or hear about it, you're not going to get the full picture. And who knows? One day when you go out to check your mail, somebody could drive by and attack you. Maybe shoot out the window or stop the car or hit you with the car or just leave the car and assault you. All because they're angry about the way people treat them. And people who are treated very poorly in a facility where they should feel safe, and we should feel safe having them in there, we got to break down in the system. And if it's broke, we need to fix it. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you were able to learn something from this. But most importantly, I'm asking that you reach out, that you find ways that you can help your family and your friends live a safer, happier life. And we can get the resources to the people who need them, not just the homeless or the people who are physically disabled, but for everybody. You need to be able to work with everybody and help prevent some of the things that could possibly happen. So go out and have yourself a wonderful day and make super memories for tomorrow.